Hello, welcome back to Read by Angelique. I am Angelique and I have a cold. So we're just gonna bear with it today. We're in the middle of Phantom of the Opera and I feel like so many pinnacle things have already happened that I'm like, what's left? Just because I'm remembering the movie and anyway. But yet we're literally like not even half finished yet. And so I'm like, what else happens? Uh, Anywho, with my cold, I feel it might just be in my head, but it sounds like my voice is a lot deeper, which I'm like, that's cool. I'll read with that. But also, it means that my voice gives out sooner. So I'm going to attempt to read chapters 9 and 10 today, but we shall see. Quick recap of chapter 8 from the last video. If you have not joined along, this is your first time, go back to the playlist and start from the beginning or pick the parts that you love the best, whatever you want to do. But in the last chapter, so the chandelier has fallen, there's a lot of drama, whatnot. Christine is not talking to Raoul, but he is determined to find her, figure out what's happening because she's disappeared from the opera for the last month. The managers are not trying to find her. They're like, she told us she was sick. We're just going to leave it at that. And Raoul's like, she told you you were sick. Did you send the opera doctor to see her? And they're like, no. We trust her word. If she needs it, she'll let us know. Come to find out, I don't think they actually have any idea where she is. So Raoul is on a manhunt, or woman hunt, shall we say. And he wants to find her. So he goes to her benefactor, the person who, him and his wife had adopted the Dies when she was young. So this one lady is still alive. So he goes to her house. When he gets there, the maid's like, she's not taking callers. But he's like, give her my card and then come back to me. And as soon as the maid takes her the card, he is invited inside, but has to go to her bedroom because she cannot use her legs right now. She's sick and old, but in a great mood. I want to be like her when I'm older, even if I'm bedridden, with such a great attitude. But she starts talking to Raoul just about how, of course, Christine is with the angel of music, don't you know? Obviously. And he's like, wait, you too? You believe in this angel of music? What is going on? He's mad, he's frustrated. Turns out, this lady's like, the angel of music is giving her music lessons. So just leave her alone, don't bother her. And it comes out that she's like, Christine loves you, right, Raoul? And Raoul's like, no, she won't marry me. And no, the lady was like, I know that you proposed. And he's like, she told you, what, blah, blah, blah. And then the lady's like, she can't marry. And he's like, what? Why? What kind of crazy, why not? And she's like, well, because the angel of music. He won't continue to visit her if she gets married. And she's like, obviously, doesn't that make sense? Of course she wouldn't marry if the angel of music didn't come. And he's like, what? This is nuts. And then a rumor comes out. Someone says that they have spotted Christine in the middle of the night in a carriage, driving slowly down the street. And there was a man in the carriage with her. So that's this rumor. After Raoul leaves this lady's house, he's like, he can't sleep. His brother tries to console him, but it's not happening. He thinks he's gonna go on this, it sounds like he's gonna go on a party rampage, but he just does not have the energy for it. And so instead, he goes to the place where Christine and this carriage were supposedly have been seen. And so he's just standing there. It's cold outside. And then all of a sudden, the moon's really bright, and this carriage pulls up, the window's down, and he sees her, and he yells. It's going really slow, the carriage, and he yells, Christine! And then as soon as he yells, the window comes up and the carriage just books it, and he runs after the carriage but does not make it in time. And then after he gets back to his house or something, Christine sends him a little letter and gives him a time and a place to meet her. And is like, don't tell anyone. So maybe the meeting is happening. Maybe not. I don't know. Chapter 9, Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. Chapter 9, At the Masked Ball. The envelope was covered with mud and unstamped. It bore the words, "To be handed to M. le Vicomte Raoul de Cheney," followed by his address in pencil. It must have been flung out in the hope that a passer-by would find the note and deliver it, which was what happened. The note had been picked up on the pavement of the Place de l'Opera. Raoul read it over again with fevered eyes. No more was needed to revive his hope. The somber picture which he had for a moment imagined of a Christine forgetting her duty to herself made way for his original conception of an unfortunate innocent child, the victim of imprudence and exaggerated sensibility. To what extent, this time, was she really a victim? Whose prisoner was she? Into what whirlpool had she been dragged? He asked himself these questions with a cruel anguish, but even in this pain it seemed endurable beside the frenzy into which he was thrown at the thought of a lying and deceitful Christine. What had happened? What influence had she undergone? What monster had carried her off, and by what means? By what means, indeed, but that of music? He knew Christine's story. After her father's death, she acquired a distaste for everything in life, including her art. She went through the conservatoire like a poor, soulless singing machine, and suddenly she awoke as though through the intervention of a god. The angel of music appeared upon the scene. She sang Margarita and Faust and triumphed. The angel of music! For 3 months, the angel of music had been giving Christine lessons. He was a punctilious singing master, and now he was taking her for drives in the Bois. Raoul's fingers clutched at his flesh, above his jealous heart. In his experience, he now asked himself with terror what game the girl was playing. Up to what point could an opera singer make a fool of a fond young man, quite new to love? Oh, misery! Thus did Raoul's thoughts fly from one extreme to the other. He no longer knew whether to pity Christine or curse her, and he pitied and cursed her turn and turn about. At all events, he bought a white domino. The hour of the appointment came at last, with his face in a mask trimmed with long, thick lace, looking a very parrot in his white wrap. The Viscount thought himself most ridiculous. Men of the world do not go to the opera ball in fancy dress. It was laughable. One thought, however, consoled the Viscount. He would certainly never be recognized. This ball was an exceptional affair, given some time before Shrovetide, in honor of the anniversary of the birth of a famous draftsman, and it was expected to be much gayer, noisier, more bohemian than the ordinary masked ball. Numbers of artists had arranged to go, accompanied by a whole cohort of models and pupils, who by midnight began to create a tremendous din. Raoul arrived at 5 minutes to 12, did not linger to look at the motley dresses displayed all the way up the marble staircase. One of the richest settings in the world allowed no fastidious mask to draw him into a contest of wits, replied to no jests, and shook off the bold familiarity of a number of couples who had already become a trifle too gay. Crossing the big crush room and escaping from a mad whirl of dancers in which he was momentarily caught, he at last entered the room mentioned in Christine's letter. He found it crammed, for this small space was the point where all those who were going to supper in the rotunda met those who were returning from taking a glass of champagne. The fun here waxed fast and furious. Raoul leant against a doorpost and waited. He did not wait long. A black domino passed and gave a quick squeeze to the tips of his fingers. He understood that it was she and followed her. "Is that you, Christine?" he asked between his teeth. The black domino turned round promptly and raised her finger to her lips, no doubt to warn him not to mention her name again. Raoul continued to follow her in silence. He was afraid of losing her, after meeting her again in such strange circumstances. His grudge against her was gone. He was even sure now that he had nothing to reproach herself with, however peculiar and inexplicable her conduct might seem. He was ready to make any display of clemency, forgiveness, or cowardice. He was in love, and no doubt he would soon receive a very natural explanation of her curious absence. The black domino turned back from time to time to see if the white domino were still following. As Raoul once more passed through the great crushed room, this time in the wake of his guide, he could not help noticing a group crowding round a person whose disguise, eccentric air, and cadaverous appearance were causing a sensation. It was a man dressed all in scarlet, with a huge hat and feathers on the top of a wonderful death's head. From his shoulders hung an immense red velvet cloak, which trailed along the floor like a king's train, and on his cloak was embroidered in gold letters, which everyone read and repeated out loud. "Touch me not. I am a red death stalking abroad." Then one, greatly daring, did try to touch him, but a skeleton hand shot out of a crimson sleeve and violently seized the rash one's wrist, and he, feeling the clutch of the knuckle bones, the furious grasp of death, uttered a cry of pain and terror. When Red Death released him at last, he ran away like a madman, pursued by the jeers of the bystanders. It was at this moment that Raoul paused in front of the funeral masquerader who had just happened to turn in his direction, and he nearly exclaimed, "The death's head of Perros Squirk!" He had recognized him. He wanted to dart forwards, forgetting Christine, but the black domino, who also seemed a prey to some strange excitement, caught him by the arm and dragged him from the crushed room, far from the mad crowd through which Red Death was stalking. The black domino kept on turning back, and apparently on 2 occasions saw something that startled her, for she hurried her pace in Raoul's as though they were being pursued. They went up 2 floors. Here the stairs and corridors were almost deserted. The black domino opened the door of a private box and beckoned to the white domino to follow her. Then Christine, whom he now knew by the sound of her voice, closed the door behind them and warned him, in a whisper, to remain at the back of the box and on no account to show himself. Raoul took off his mask. Christine kept on hers. And when Raoul was about to ask her to remove it, he was surprised to see her put her ear to the partition and listen eagerly for a sound outside. Then she opened the door ajar, looked out into the corridor, and in a low voice said, "He must have gone up higher." Suddenly she exclaimed, "He is coming down again!" She tried to close the door, but Raoul prevented her, for he had seen on the top step of the staircase that led to the floor above a red foot, followed by another, and slowly, majestically, the whole scarlet dress of Red Death met his eyes, and he once more saw the death's head of Perros Squirk. "It's he!" he exclaimed. "This time he shall not escape me." But Christine had slammed the door at the moment when Raoul was on the point of rushing out. He tried to push her aside. "Whom do you mean?" she asked in a changed voice. "Who shall not escape you?" Raoul tried to overcome the girl's resistance by force, but she repelled him with a strength which he could not have suspected in her. He understood, or thought he understood, and at once lost his temper. "Who?" he repeated angrily. Why, he, the man who hides behind that hideous mask of death, the evil genius of the churchyard at Perros, Red Death. In a word, madam, your friend, your angel of music. But I shall snatch off his mask, as I shall snatch off my own. And this time we shall look each other in the face, he and I, with no evil and no lies between us, and I shall know whom you love and who loves you. He burst into a mad laugh, while Christine gave a disconsolate moan behind her velvet mask. With a tragic gesture, she flung out her two arms, fixing a barrier of white flesh against the door. In the name of love, Raoul, you shall not pass. He stopped. What had she said? In the name of their love? Never before had she confessed that she loved him, and yet she had had opportunities enough. Puh! Her only object was to gain a few seconds. She wished to give Red Death time to escape, and, in accents of childish hatred, he said, You lie, madam, for you do not love me, and you have never loved me. What a poor fellow I must be to let you mock and flout me as you have done. Why did you give me every reason for hope at Perros? For honest hope, madam, for I am an honest man, and I believed you to be an honest woman, when your only intention was to deceive me. Alas, you have deceived us all. You have taken a shameful advantage of the candid affection of your benefactress herself, who continues to believe in your sincerity, while you go about the opera ball with Red Death. I despise you. And he burst into tears. She allowed him to insult her. She thought but of one thing, to prevent him from leaving the box. You will beg my pardon one day for all those ugly words, Raoul, and I shall forgive you. He shook his head. No, no, you have driven me mad. When I think that I had only one object in life, to give my name to an opera wench. Raoul! How can you? I shall die of shame. No, dear, live, said Christine in a grave and breaking voice. And goodbye. Goodbye, Raoul. The boy stepped forward, staggering as he went. He risked one more sarcasm. Oh, but you must let me come and applaud you from time to time. I shall never sing again, Raoul. Really, he replied, still more satirically. So, he is taking you off the stage. I congratulate you. But we shall meet in the Boys one of these evenings. Not in the Boys, nor anywhere, Raoul. You shall not see me again. May one at least ask to what darkness you are returning? For what hell are you leaving, mysterious lady, or for what paradise? I came to tell you, dear, but I cannot tell you now. You would not believe me. You have lost faith in me, Raoul. It is finished. She spoke in such a despairing voice that the lad began to feel remorse for his cruelty. But look here, he cried. Can't you tell me what all this means? You are free. There is no one to interfere with you. You go about Paris. You put on a domino to come to the ball. Why do you not go home? What have you been doing this past fortnight? What is this tale about the angel of music which you have been telling Mamma Valerius? Someone may have taken you in, played upon your innocence. I was a witness of it myself at Perros. But you know what to believe now. You seem to me quite sensible, Christine. You know what you are doing. And meanwhile, Mamma Valerius lies about waiting for you at home and appealing to your good genius. Explain yourself, Christine, I beg of you. Anyone might have been deceived as I was. What is this force? Christine simply took off her mask and said, Dear, it is a tragedy. Raoul now saw her face and could not restrain an exclamation of surprise and terror. The fresh complexion of former days was gone. A mortal pallor covered those features which he had known so charming and so gentle. and sorrow had furrowed them with pitiless lines and traced dark and unspeakably sad shadows under her eyes. My dearest, he moaned, holding out his arms. You promised to forgive me. Perhaps, someday, perhaps, she said, resuming her mask, and she went away, forbidding him with a gesture to follow her. He tried to disobey her, but she turned round and repeated her gesture of farewell with such authority that he dared not move a step. He watched her till she was out of sight. Then he also went down among the crowd, hardly knowing what he was doing, with throbbing temples and an aching heart, and as he crossed the dance floor, he asked if anybody had seen Red Death. Yes, everyone had seen Red Death, but Raoul could not find him, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, he turned down the passage behind the scenes that led to Christine Daae's dressing room. His footsteps took him to that room where he had first known suffering. He tapped at the door. There was no answer. He entered as he had entered when he looked everywhere for the man's voice. The room was empty. A gas jet was burning, turned down low. He saw some letter paper on the little desk. He thought of writing to Christine, but he heard steps in the passage. He had only time to hide in the inner room, which was separated from the dressing room by a curtain. Christine entered, took off her mask with a weary movement, and flung it on the table. She sighed and let her pretty head fall into her 2 hands. What was she thinking of? Of Raoul? No, for Raoul heard her murmur, "Poor Eric." At first he thought that he must be mistaken. To begin with, he was persuaded that, if anyone was to be pitied, it was he, Raoul. It would have been quite natural if she had said, "Poor Raoul," after what had happened between them, but, shaking her head, she repeated, "Poor Eric." What had this Eric to do with Christine's sighs, and why was she pitying Eric when Raoul was so unhappy? Christine began to write, deliberately, calmly, and so placidly that Raoul, who was still trembling from the effects of the tragedy that separated them, was painfully impressed. What coolness, he said to himself. She wrote on, filling 2, 3, 4 sheets. Suddenly she raised her head and hid the sheets in her bodice. She seemed to be listening. Raoul also listened. Whence came that strange sound, that distant rhythm? A faint singing seemed to issue from the walls. Yes, it was as though the walls themselves were singing. The song became plainer. The words were now distinguishable. He heard a voice, a very beautiful, very soft, very captivating voice. But, for all its softness, it remained a male voice. The voice came nearer and nearer. It came through the wall. It approached. And now the voice was in the room, in front of Christine. Christine rose and addressed the voice, as though speaking to someone beside her. "Here I am, Eric," she said. "I am ready. But you are late." Raoul, peeping from behind the curtain, could not believe his eyes, which showed him nothing. Christine's face lit up. A smile of happiness appeared upon her bloodless lips, a smile like that of sick people when they receive the first hope of recovery. The voice without a body went on singing, and certainly Raoul had never in his life heard anything more absolutely and heroically sweet, more gloriously suggestive, more delicate, more powerful, in short, more irresistibly triumphant. He listened to it in a fever, and he now began to understand how Christine Daae was able to appear one evening before the stupefied audience with accents of a beauty hitherto unknown, of a superhuman exaltation, while doubtless still under the influence of the mysterious and invisible master. The voice was singing the wedding night song from Romeo and Juliet. Raoul saw Christine stretch out her arms to the voice as she had done in the churchyard at Paros, to the invisible violin playing the resurrection of Lazarus, and nothing could describe the passion with which the voice sang. "Faint links thee to me from ever a day." The strains went throughout Raoul's heart. struggling against the charm that seemed to deprive him of all his will and all his energy and almost all his lucidity. At the moment when he needed them most, he succeeded in drawing back the curtain that hid him, and he walked to where Christine stood. She herself was moving to the back of the room, the whole wall of which was occupied by a great mirror that reflected her image, but not his, for he was just behind and entirely covered by her. Fate links thee to me forever and a day. Christine walked towards her image in the glass, and the image came towards her. The two Christines, the real one and the reflection, ended by touching, and Raoul put out his arms to clasp the two in one embrace. But, by a sort of dazzling miracle that sent him staggering, Raoul was suddenly flung back while an icy blast swept across his face. He saw not 2, but 4, 8, 20 Christines spinning round him, laughing at him and feeling so swiftly that he could not touch one of them. At last, everything stood still again, and he saw himself in the glass. But Christine had disappeared. He rushed up to the glass. He struck at the walls. Nobody. And meanwhile, the room still echoed with the distant, passionate singing. Fate links thee to me forever a day. Which way? Which way had Christine gone? Which way would she return? Would she return? Alas, had she not declared to him that everything was finished? And was the voice not repeating? Fate links thee to me forever and a day? To me? To whom? Then, worn out, beaten, empty-brained, he sat down on the chair which Christine had just left. Like her, he let his head fall to his hands. When he raised it, the tears were streaming down his young cheeks, real, heavy tears like those which jealous children shed, tears that wept for a sorrow which was in no way fanciful, but which was common to all the lovers on earth, and which he expressed aloud. "Who is this Eric?" he said. That was a good chapter. Chapter 9. Ooh, so exciting. I'm imagining, if you've seen the movie, this scene in the movie, Christine sings her like best song as she's like in a trance following the opera. Anyway, that's spoilers for I think the rest of the book, so I'm not gonna say it anymore, but it's such a like really dramatic scene with like Raoul chasing Christine before she disappears. I'm excited to rewatch the movie after I finish this. And maybe I'll have to like watch the play again or the musical. It's a great one. Anywho. Chapter 10. Forget the man's voice. The day after Christine had vanished before his eyes in a sort of dazzling whirl that still made him doubt the evidence of his senses, Monsieur le Vicomte de Cheny called to inquire at Mamma Valerius. He came upon a charming picture. Christine herself was seated by the bedside of the old lady, who was sitting up against her pillows, knitting. The pink and white had returned to the young girl's cheeks. The dark rings around her eyes had disappeared. Raoul no longer recognized the tragic face of the day before. If a veil of a melancholy had not lingered over those adorable features as the last trace of the weird drama in whose toils that mysterious child was struggling, he could have believed that Christine was not its heroine at all. She rose, without showing any emotion, and offered him her hand. But Raoul's stupefaction was so great that he stood there dumbfounded, without a gesture, without a word. "Well, Monsieur de Cheny," exclaimed Mamma Valerius, "you don't know our Christine? Her good genius has sent her back to us." "Mamma," the girl broke in promptly, while a deep blush mantled her eyes, "I thought, Mamma, that there was to be no more questions of that. You know there is no such thing as the angel of music." But, child, he gave you lessons for 3 months. Mama, I promised to explain everything to you one of these days, and I hope to do so. But you promised me, until that day, to be silent and to ask me no more questions ever. Provided that you promise never to leave me again. But have you promised that, Christine? Mamma, all this cannot interest Monsieur de Cheney. On the contrary, mademoiselle, said the young man in a voice which he tried to make firm and brave, but which still trembled. Anything that concerns you interests me to an extent which perhaps you will one day understand. I do not deny that my surprise equals my pleasure at finding you with your adopted mother, and that, after what happened between us yesterday, after what you said, and what I was able to guess, I hardly expected to see you here so soon. I should be the first to delight at your return, if you were not so bent upon preserving a secrecy that may be fatal to you. And I have been your friend too long not to be alarmed with Mamma Valerius at a disastrous adventure which will remain dangerous until we have unraveled its threads, and which will certainly end by making you its victim, Christine. At these words, Mamma Valerius tossed about in her bed. What does this mean? She cried. Is Christine in danger? Yes, madam, said Raoul courageously, notwithstanding the signs which Christine made to him. Great God! Exclaimed the good, simple old woman, gasping for breath. You must tell me everything, Christine. Why did you try to reassure me? And what danger is it, Monsieur de Cheney? An impostor is abusing her good faith. Is the angel of music an impostor? She told you herself that there was no angel of music. But then what is this? But then what is it, in heaven's name? You will be the death of me. There is a terrible mystery around us, madam, around you, around Christine, a mystery much more dreadful than any number of ghosts or genii. Mamma Valerius turned a terrified face to Christine, who had already run to her adopted mother and was holding her in her arms. Don't believe him, Mummy. Don't believe him, she repeated. Then tell me that you will never leave me again, implored the widow. Christine was silent, and Raoul resumed. That is what you must promise, Christine. It is the only thing that can reassure your mother and me. We will undertake not to ask you a single question about the past, if you promise us to remain under our protection in future. That is an undertaking which I have not asked of you, and a promise which I refuse to make you, said the young girl haughtily. I am mistress of my own actions, Monsieur de Cheney. You have no right to control them, and I will beg you to desist henceforth. As to what I have done during the last fortnight, there is only one man in the world who has the right to demand an account of me. My husband. Well, I have no husband, and I never mean to marry. She threw out her hands to emphasize her words, and Raoul turned pale, not only because of the words which he had heard, but because he had caught sight of a plain gold ring on Christine's finger. You have no husband, and yet you wear a wedding ring. He tried to seize her hand, but she swiftly drew it back. That's a present, she said, blushing once more and vainly striving to hide her embarrassment. Christine, you have no husband. That ring can only have been given by one who hopes to make you his wife. Why deceive us further? Why torture me still more? That ring is a promise, and that promise has been accepted. That's what I said, exclaimed the old lady. And what did she answer, madame? What I chose, said Christine, driven to exasperation. Don't you think, monsieur, that this cross-examination has lasted long enough? As far as I'm concerned, Raoul was afraid to let her finish her speech. He had interrupted her. I beg your pardon for speaking as I did, mademoiselle. You know the good intentions that make me meddle, just now, in matters which, no doubt, do not concern me. But allow me to tell you what I have seen, and I have seen more than you suspect, Christine. Or what I thought I saw. For, to tell you the truth, I have sometimes been inclined to doubt the evidence of my eyes. Well, what did you see, sir, or think you saw? I saw your ecstasy at the sound of the voice, Christine. The voice that came from the wall, or the next room to yours. Yes, your ecstasy. And that is what makes me alarmed on your behalf. You are under a very dangerous spell, and yet it seems that you are aware of the imposture, because you say today that there is no angel of music. If that be so, Christine, why do you follow him then? Why do you stand up with radiant features as though you were really hearing angels? Ah, it is a very dangerous voice, Christine, for I myself, when I heard it, was so much fascinated that I let you vanish before my eyes without seeing which way you passed. Christine, Christine, in the name of heaven, in the name of the Father who is himself in heaven now, and who loved you so dearly, and who loved me too, Christine, tell us, tell your benefactress and me, to whom does that voice belong? If you do, we will save you in spite of yourself. Come, Christine, the name of the man who had the audacity to put a ring on your finger. Monsieur de Cheney, the girl declared coldly. You shall never know. Thereupon, seeing the hostile manner in which her ward addressed the Viscount, Mamma Valeria suddenly took Christine's part. And if she does not love that man, Monsieur le Vicomte, even then it is no business of yours. Alas, madame, Raoul humbly replied, unable to restrain his tears. Alas, I believe that Christine really does love him. But it is not only that which drives me to despair, for what I am not certain of, madame, is that the man whom Christine loves is worthy of her love. It is for me to be the judge of that, monsieur, said Christine, looking Raoul angrily in the face. When a man, continued Raoul, adopts such romantic methods to entice a young girl's affections, the man must be either a villain or the girl a fool. Is that it? Christine, Raoul, why do you condemn a man whom you have never seen, whom no one knows, and about whom yourself know nothing? Yes, Christine, yes. I at least know the name which you thought to keep from me forever. The name of your angel of music, mademoiselle, is Eric. Christine at once betrayed herself. She turned as white as a sheet and stammered, Who told you? You yourself. How do you mean? By pitying him. The other night, the night of the masked ball, when you went to your dressing room, did you not say, poor Eric? Well, Christine, there was a poor Raoul who overheard you. This is the second time that you have listened behind the door, Monsieur de Cheney. I was not behind the door. I was in the dressing room. In the inner room, mademoiselle. Oh, unhappy man, moaned the girl, showing every sign of unspeakable terror. Unhappy man, do you want to be killed? Perhaps. Raoul uttered his perhaps with so much love and despair in his voice. Well, I did not read it with love and despair in my voice, but oh well. Raoul uttered his perhaps with so much love and despair in his voice that Christine could not keep back a sob. She took his hands and looked at him with all the pure affection of which she was capable. Raoul, she said, forget the man's voice and do not even remember its name. You must never try to fathom the mystery of the man's voice. Is the mystery so very terrible? There is no more awful mystery on this earth. Swear to me that you will make no attempt to find out, she insisted. Swear to me that you will never come to my dressing room again, unless I send for you. Then you promise to send for me sometimes, Christine? I promise. When? Tomorrow. Then I swear to do as you ask." He kissed her hands and went away, cursing Eric and resolving to be patient. Some fiery dialogue there. End of chapter 10. So spicy. I'm like so interested now in what the mystery behind Eric is. Like, is it going to be the same as in others and how they tell it? Anyway, who knows? Who knows? We shall know soon enough. Cheers. Until next time, thank you for joining me for chapters 9 and 10.